telling us to enjoy it while they're young. But our days are filled with chaos and stress and cooking and endless laundry piles. Where's the time to enjoy anything? Yeah, that's what I always thought too. There's so much I have to do. When do I find time for peace and joy and happiness when I barely have time to sleep? Mama, it's time for a shift. You can be a happy mom. Yeah, it's possible. If I can, you can. Trust me. I've been a mess. I've been depressed. I've been overwhelmed. I've been to the bottom of the pits. And I've risen. I've grown. I've bloomed. And it all started when I realized I didn't have to anything. I get to. It is my privilege and my honor and my divine responsibility to be the queen of my home. It's not a burden. I'm not the janitor and the lunch lady. I'm in charge. I'm the ruler. I'm the chaos coordinator. I'm the calm in the storm. I don't have to anything. I get to. And so do you. So let's rise, mamas. Adjust your crown. Accept your responsibility. And change the effing world. It's all in the way you choose to see it. You're listening to I Get To, the podcast with Brittany Clarkson. That's me. Hello, my friends. Today, I'm going to tell you a story. This episode might be a little bit different than some others, but I really want to tell you the story of the day that Stellar's J saved my life. Now, this is also the story of how I came to have a podcast and how I came to have an online business and how I came to be the author of The Happy Mom Brain. So, in order to tell you how a Stellar's J saved my life, we have to backtrack a little bit. I had struggled with depression for I can't even think of how many years at the time. Since high school, middle school probably, but I was pretty sure of it in high school, confirmed it in college that I was depressed, that I had general anxiety disorder. We tried a number of things with medications and some different counselors, and it was kind of always a back and forth. Like, I'd feel better for a little while, but not for long. We came to 2015. I was working like 2 jobs. I was married, so we had a house of our own to upkeep, multiple pets. I think it was 2 dogs, 2 cats at the time. Yeah, 2 dogs, 2 cats. It was kind of a handful. That's one of my dogs right now. Gross. But everything really piled up on me, and I got very, very stressed. And I couldn't handle things anymore. So for my own mental health, I quit my job. And okay, it's not really humble for me to say. I gave them a month's notice because it was the holiday season and I worked in retail. So I powered through a whole extra month after I determined I can't keep doing this. And I did a whole nother month of work. And then I quit my second job, which was teaching dance at the studio. I only quit that temporarily. I did go back to doing that. Briefly. So that was November that I walked away. Black Friday was my last day working retail in 2015. And for my own mental health, I kept seeing a counselor. I had a really fantastic counselor at the time. And I was on medications too. But I realized from like a voice memo that I saved on my phone way back then that the medications were actually kind of messing with my head and making me feel crazy instead of like helping. So I think some of that is that my natural tendency that leads into the depression is to numb everything out and to quit trying to experience any emotions because I didn't want the negative at the same time. So I would numb out everything and I wouldn't feel positives anymore either. And I think it was the medication that just kind of tore that wall down without me mentally being prepared for the wall to be torn down, I guess. I think that's what made me feel over the top insane while on the medications. Like I thought very much that I was demon possessed at the time. I don't know, my counselor was fantastic, but she was not pounding it into my head at the time that my thoughts were not necessarily mine. That just because a thought comes into your head doesn't mean it belongs to you. It doesn't mean you have to keep it. It doesn't mean it's true. So I had not properly detached myself from the negative thinking. I had mostly learned from my counselor how to cope with the anxiety. So when the thoughts came in and they made me feel anxious, I learned how to reset the nervous system, deep breathings and those types of things. So I still had quite a journey ahead of me. Now remember, this was November. I quit my job and really started focusing on myself through Christmas time. And then January comes along and there's my birthday. Well, by January, I am pregnant with our first child. I mean, it was kind of on purpose, but also like we thought it would take a while because I had been on birth control for years, and the internet told me when you get off birth control, it can take up to like 6 months to get pregnant. So we're like, oh, cool, we could go off birth control now and then in like 6 months try. No. I'm here to tell you right now, if you think that works, it doesn't necessarily work. When you go off birth control, you can get pregnant immediately, or it could take a while. You don't know, but it could be. Just like, when you're breastfeeding, some people don't necessarily ovulate when they're breastfeeding, but you can definitely still get pregnant while breastfeeding. Just a little PSA for you guys. Back to our topic at hand. So I'd been dealing with all this depression, and then I became a mom. And all the while dealing with my depression, I never really knew who I was. I wore a lot of masks. I pretended to fit in anywhere I went. I mostly kept quiet and kept to myself, kept my opinions to myself, because I didn't want to disagree with anybody. And I didn't want anyone to not like me. In doing so, it turns out I pushed a lot of people away. I was told that I was unapproachable, and it's really because I thought everyone else already hated me. So, sorry, everyone in high school. Also, so January I get pregnant, have my baby by October, and I've been off medication this whole time, feeling pretty much fine. Really just dealing with like the stress of motherhood and some anxiety. But the depression didn't come from me for a while. I mean, it came back a couple times actually during pregnancy. And it came back when my first was little. But it would always be, like every 6 months or something, it would come back around. And that's kind of just the game I played, where it kept coming and going and coming and going. And it was kind of constantly screwing with me, but it wasn't bad enough that I needed to get help at the same time. Like it would be bad for like one day and then I'd be over it. And I mean bad for like one day. I mean like planning how to unalive myself bad. But I also dealt with crippling decision anxiety. So making that decision is a pretty big commitment. And I would always just put off that decision for another day. And like by the next day, I felt better. So yeah, that's what happened. All right. So now we're going to fast forward. Everything's pretty much the same. I'm constantly feeling like I'm drowning in housework, constantly feeling, behind on everything. Now we get to June of 2020. rough year. It's hard to believe now that that even happened. I mean, so many things are back to normal, but there's still like, a lot of residual stuff. And it's like, what, this major catastrophe happened to all of us and we're just still going? Cool. But in April of 2020, I had been seeking counseling with BetterHelp because I had fears of what kind of mom I was. I thought that I was not good enough for my kids. That's basically, I thought that bad enough that I was like, I'm going to talk to a counselor about this online. But you see, I'd been more or less socially distancing and quarantined at home since December. Like in December, all I really did was family Christmases. And I tried to keep my distance from anyone who might be sick because I had a baby in early February. And my midwife had said, hey, this holiday season, you need to try to, distance from people. Don't get sick right now. You do not want to be sick having your baby. So with the cold going around, just try not to get sick. Try to stay home. Try to stay out of grocery stores. So I started staying home in December and very limited leaving the house. And then, have a baby in February. So we stay home for 6 weeks without taking the baby hardly anywhere because the newborn's immune system. And, we only leave the house minimally. Plus also, like, I can't move anywhere. I just delivered a baby. You can't walk for like 2 weeks. It's just not fun to go anywhere. And then by the time that 6 weeks is up, planet-wide quarantine happens for 2 weeks or more. So yeah, by April, I was like, I need support. I need support. I also didn't have any good close friendships. I wasn't in any mom groups at the time. Like I'd been very isolated due to my personality. So it was a very, very rough time for me coming through April. And then we get to June. It's June 12th. And my husband's at work. And I have I'm beyond burnt out at this point. I am in a depressive episode. And I don't think I can continue on anymore. The kids were super high energy that day. They get that way all the time. I currently have a 2, a 4, and a 5-year-old. So, 2 years ago, I had a newborn and a 2 and a 3-year-old. It was rough. They were chaos and they could not control themselves. And how could you ever expect them to? But I just remember the second my husband came home, I kissed him and went out the back door. I kissed all the boys and went out the back door. I put on my rubber boots and my raincoat and I went out to the forest. And I just couldn't figure out exactly what to do at the time. I knew I didn't want to be around anymore. I knew it was too much for me to handle. What I didn't know was that I was wrong. But we've had this stupid rope hanging on a tree for a very, very long time, and I don't even know why it's there. But right there in the woods, I had the idea. Well, wouldn't that be this perfect poetic ending for me? Because you see, I live in the house I grew up in. So the forest here was always soothing to me in childhood too. And the rain has always been important to me. I've always loved the rain. Basically, I never wanted to leave Oregon because the rain. And so there I am standing in the rain in the forest that means so much to me. And I'm like, I could just end it right here, right now. Wouldn't that be the perfect way for me to go? And for some reason, I didn't just decide. I had to think about it. And as I continued walking through the woods, and I walked up to a dead bird on my path. It was a Stellar's jay, my favorite bird. If you don't know what a Stellar's jay looks like, they kind of look like a cardinal, with like the shape of the feathers on their head. But they are this like magnificent deep blue, and then their heads are black. And they have always been a favorite bird to me. They've always been a comfort to me. And here I am walking up to this bird that is dead right in front of me on the path. Dead, just like I was thinking of doing to myself. And this bird has, like, it's a gruesome scene. The maggots, like, in its open stomach cavity. Ugh. You didn't have to see it. I did. But I had to see it. Because you see, in seeing this dead Stellar's jay, I was just flooded and overwhelmed with revelation. There in the pouring down rain, I had realized my decision anxiety kept me from ever committing suicide in the past. So thank you for that. I cannot leave my children because I am the best mom for them. Death is not beautiful. It is not poetic. It is not meant for me right now. I was not meant to be like that dead Stellar's jay. And I felt the presence of God in my life for what felt like the first time. I'd always grown up a Christian. I'd always invited the Holy Spirit in. I'd always felt some sort of guidance, but I had never been spiritually awakened by Him like I did in this moment. I'd been baptized in high school in the pool, and I felt nothing when that happened. Now, this day, I have the rain directly from the heavens pouring down on me, and I feel the Holy Spirit wash over me. And that felt like a baptism. I was made new. Hey, Mama. If you're feeling lost in a mess of motherhood and chaos, let me tell you about this thing that happened to me. I was having a major depressive episode when the most hectic and stressful day came at me. I was feeling so broken and defeated. I felt so unworthy of these beautiful children who depended on me. I couldn't even depend on myself. I was sad. I was miserable. I wanted out of this life. Then it dawned on me in this spiritual, kismet kind of way. I have all the tools I need to make my life better. I know how to do it. I know how to not be depressed. I know how to not be stressed. Yet here I am, not doing the things I know I need to do. Mama, I know you've got the answers you need to. But just in case you're having a hard time finding them, I put together the Happy Mom Brain Workbook so you can learn this process that I used for internal healing just the same way that I did it. This is what helped me learn to be a happy mom, and I'm so honored to share it with you. The Happy Mom Brain is available at BrittanyClarkson.com, or just follow the link on the top of the page. Now, here's something really interesting that I didn't find out for months. But there's a spiritual meaning to the Stellar's jay. It says on summitdaily.com that the Stellar's jay is the message of hope in despair and the will to live. The jay is willing to teach you fearlessness, adaptability, and survival, but you must be willing to follow its lead. Isn't that fascinating? That Stellar's jay was not a coincidence. That was divine intervention. That was my spirit animal leading me. That was the hand of God putting hope and a will to live in my path at the perfect moment. And the rain came at the perfect moment in June. It doesn't always rain in June. It was just such an incredible culmination of events. And at that moment, I also realized I have I have no excuse to be depressed. I have everything in me that I need to fix this. I just have to be willing to move. I have to be willing to make the changes that need to be made that I already know needed to be made. I'd spoken to enough counselors. I'd done enough research. I'd taken psychology classes. I'd read enough self help books. I had everything that I needed to overcome what I was going through. So, what I did after that day, I went back in the house. I was just stunned, a smile on my face. I mean, happy to see my family. They had no idea what I'd just gone through. It was the most significant day in my life. I mean, aside from giving birth to my kids, I guess that was a pretty big deal. That all went into this. But after that, I went and I put together this list of questions to keep me in check mentally. I created my own mental health toolkit, questions that I could turn to make sure that I'm keeping on track, to make sure I'm taking care of myself, to make sure I'm living with intention, to make sure that I'm paying attention to what I'm doing, to make sure that I'm taking time to care for myself and the needs of my body and my mind and my spirit. And this whole list of questions I just looked at and was like, this isn't for me. This can help a lot of people. And I felt this tug of God giving me so much courage. He didn't just call me to live that day in the forest. Months later, he would call me again to share what had happened, to share what I know. He put so many pieces of encouragement in my path. So many things in all of my life that have come together for this moment. And I believe that what I'm doing here is divinely inspired. And sometimes I get off track and I say things that I'm thinking on my mind. Sorry about that. But overall, we try to keep it divinely inspired. I try to go where God's leading me because I know that's what's going to help whoever ends up listening to this. So let me be clear. If I ever drop some incredible wisdom here, it's not me. That is the Holy Spirit. That is wisdom herself speaking through me. Because I'm not that smart. But I am a conduit. I am willing to use my mouth to say the things that wisdom tells me to say. So I took all those questions and I realized, well, if anyone else is going to answer these, they need to understand why they're answering them. And I took all those questions, ended up writing a book about him to lead you into the questions, to help you to find intention in your life, to ensure that you're practicing practical and helpful self-care, all the things that helped me out of my depression and anxiety, and still do. I turn to those frequently. I put all that in a book, and that's the Happy Mom Brain. I'm happy to say that as we are 2 years after that day, I have not thought about ending my life. I have not struggled through depression. I have been on a healing journey. I've had bad days, I've had bad moments, but because I'm caring for myself and I'm setting the intentions I need to set, I'm being mindful of the habits I'm allowing in my life. I haven't allowed those bad days to spiral into depressive episodes that last week's. And I will mention I have had intrusive thoughts to end my life since then, but that's all they were. An intrusive thought that I identified and laughed in its face. I had one, I was fighting with my husband and I had the thought come into my head, you should end it. And I started laughing like, no, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Get out of here, you dumb thought. You do not belong in my head. And I felt such a sense of empowerment because never in my life had that happened before. And here I was in a stressful situation, still strong enough to say no. And that's the kind of empowerment that I hope and pray on you. That whatever you're struggling through, you'll overcome it and realize just how strong you are. And to find the purpose that keeps you going so that you can laugh in the face of anyone who tells you otherwise. Thank you so much for listening today. If you could do me a quick little favor and rate and review this podcast, that would mean so, so much to me. And also, if you could screenshot the episode you're listening to and share it on your social media so that other mamas can find the same episodes and learn the same things you've learned, that would mean so much to me, so much to the whole world. Thank you so much for making the world a better place.